develop an understanding of what assessments involves in the context of legal risk, which should be shared in all streams of business of any financial institutions. Factors which can be taken into account include: 1. The legal infrastructure of any particular jurisdiction where the financial institution conducts business, including the independence of judges, the sophistication of contract and corporate law concepts, enforcement of judgments and arbitration awards, and risk associated with transaction and contractual certainty. Second, whether relevant sources of law together with market practice are reasonably firmly established with respect to the legal issues most likely to affect the institution's business in a given jurisdiction. Third, the extent of any legal uncertainty, the worst case scenario, if uncertainty was resolved in a manner adverse to the institution. Fourth, the historical track record of other institutions in same business, in same jurisdiction in relation to adverse claims or defective transactions. Fifth, the institution's own knowledge and confidence in relation to the regulatory environment, especially in relation to the marketing of a new product. Sixth, the risk of collateral damage if the risk materializes, for example, reputational issues and political implications. Who should be responsible for this assessment? It would seem that in first place this role would fall on the legal department. Scoring on cards is generally recommended as a methodology in the context of risk management. Scoring system is likely to have some benefits, including the provision of a more detailed rationale for more difficult risk assessment decisions. The relationship between the political risk and the legal risk is so close that its effects should perhaps be taken into account when assessing the legal risk of doing business in a particular country. The third component of legal risk management is monitoring. Monitoring involves the regular reporting of material information to those who can assess its significance. A strong and independent management information system is a necessary requirement. Careful monitoring is not likely to result in distortions caused by conflicts of individual and departmental interest or other factors which might inhibit the free flow of clear factual information. The in-house lawyers must work with sufficient independence and access to the necessary information within the organizational structure to allow a rigorous approach to the relevant procedures, whether or not this amounts to whistleblowing in more extreme situations. Lawyers are obviously needed in order to provide technical legal advice in a wide range of areas, and it is likely to be advantageous that the lawyers make beneficial contribution to decision making. But the allocations of responsibilities and reporting lines have to be crystal clear. Furthermore, the effectiveness of this function, as well as other aspects of risk management framework, will need to be subject to comprehensive internal audit by operationally independent personnel. The fact that the procedure exists and that those involved in this implementation are having guaranteed independence should itself be a substantive benefit in maintaining what the BCABS operational risk paper describes as high standards of ethical behavior at all levels of the bank. In establishing monitoring procedures, financial institutions will need to think about the appropriate risk indicators in the context of legal risk. Entry into new markets should always point to rigorous risk assessment in any event. The following are suggested as possible examples: new legislation, including the proposals for new legislation, new case laws, significant changes in market practice and related documentation, changes in key personnel, feedback from regulators or other market participants which indicate hitherto unidentified legal risks, legal actions brought against other market participants that potentially might be brought against one's own institution, legal actions or other circumstances affecting market participants that might have a direct or indirect impact on the institution. political changes which might be expected to result in a change in how the laws and regulations are applied, a significant change in advice received from external legal advisors on a material point, unusual qualifications or assumptions in formal legal opinions, significant changes to the availability of cost of insurance cover, the use of old standard documentation. Now I'm coming to the fourth component of legal risk management, that is control or mitigation. Commercial insurance is an obvious method of controlling or mitigating loss caused by legal risk. But it is unlikely that the commercial insurance will be available to cover all forms of legal risk, and it is important that the limits and conditions of particular insurance policies are properly analyzed and understood. Similar issues arise with other mitigating instruments in the form of hedging transactions or derivatives, etc. Such mitigation tools give rise to issues of their own and, as has been said, may simply replace one risk with another risk. Nevertheless, they have their own value. In relation to control, financial institutions will wish to develop advanced strategies to deal with at least more predictable risk scenarios. However, most of legal risks not only have the low probability and high impact characteristics, but also a quality of unpredictability. Controlling the loss resulting from legal risk will involve legal review of impact on documentation as well as establishing resources to defend or prosecute claims and an analysis of likely financial impact. Sound practice would suggest that the documentation should be reviewed on a regular basis in order to ensure that the financial institution remains in step with market practice and legal developments that might otherwise have escaped attention. Depending upon the resources of an in-house legal department, it may be appropriate to use external legal resources for all or part of such review. It may be appropriate for non-legal personnel involved in the deal making to be regularly updated as to any important legal issues that might flow from the manner in which they execute the deals. Another aspect of legal management is opinions and similar documents. In appropriate circumstances, reliance is placed on the formal legal opinions from external counsel. They are commonly directed towards very specific sets of circumstances and documents. They also tend to be based on precisely crafted assumptions and qualifications, many of which are of highly technical nature. If reliance is to be placed on the opinions, the assumptions need to be examined. The practice of obtaining due diligence reports in connection with major transactions also needs careful review. The due diligence report raises various questions which shall be investigated appropriately. From analyzing the components of the legal risk management, we can conclude that, firstly, the management of risk is not a precise science, and thus it is particularly difficult. For example, many have argued that the legal risk should not be perceived as a risk which is truly separate from other risks, whether operational risk, credit risk, or otherwise. Legal risk rarely become a significant problem unless an associated risk, typically the risk of a counterparty being unwilling or unable to pay, or the risk of an employee going off the rails, also manifests itself. However, the argument can also be made that at least certain kinds of risks, for example, defective documentation, may give rise to difficulties in their own right. A security interest which turns out to be invalid in the context of the consumer's insolvency is almost certain to result in loss for a financial institution, and the root cause of the loss is likely to be essentially a defect in procedure, which is in the nature of legal risk. The role of in-house lawyers, especially insofar as the issues raised in this paper would suggest that in-house lawyers will become further involved with risk management rather than simply providing legal advice. A degree of independence would seem to be essential if the in-house lawyer is to be able to perform the role effectively. The financial world has yet to adjust to this requirement. And lastly, a question remains as to the relationship between the role of an in-house lawyer as a risk manager along with the traditional compliance function and those who are charged with responsibility for journal risk as opposed to legal risk alone. How will market practice in this area evolve? The role of regulators is likely to be crucial, not merely as supervisor and enforcer in the traditional sense, but also as an effective cross-pollinator of ideas. This does not necessarily involve the acceptance of unnecessary intrusiveness. Enlightened self-interest would suggest that a degree of knowledge and experience pooling, perhaps through the medium of the regulator, would in long run benefit the financial market as a whole, and everyone would benefit from its smooth operation. Hope you have enjoyed the presentation, and thanks for the patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Mridul Gupta ji. You have given very wide definition of the legal risk. I think it is in the Vessel Committee report. Basically, whatever I have understood from the deliberation of the Mridul Gupta, the legal risk involves all types of the risk in the financial sanction of a loan or any borrowing or any facility by a financial institution. That means it doesn't cover only the legal risk relating to the department of the law, that is the documentation. But basically legal risk involved, that's why there was a discussion in the first session that there may be department of the financial valuers and for many other things in the legal firm. Because he has said the legal risk may involve the appraisal of the project itself, whether this type of the project has been ever defaulted, what type of the claim has been lost to the financial institutions by the previous borrowers. What is the problem in the commitment by the financial institutions before giving the loans? What types of the terms has been agreed by the financial institutions on the basis of which the claim may be lodged against the financial institution. Another thing has also been said, if whatever has been committed that has not been given in time and not followed by the financial institution, then the counter claim can come against the financial institutions. Another thing is regarding the collateral security. Basically the collateral security, this is the, for this law department or the in-house lawyers can take the opinions of the outside agencies. But even then, the collateral security, the valuation of the collateral security, realizable value, what are the methods and what are the risks involved in the realization, and also the insurance portion. That is on the basis of what type of the insurance has been taken by the financial, by the borrower or any persons. This is also covered in this. Because if there is a problem with the collateral security, there is a risk of the money of the financial institution. Regarding the political challenge and the political scenario which is said by Advocate Mridul Gupta ji, which may be in the Vessel Commission report, I not fully understood whatever written in the Vessel, though I have some idea. These types of the risk, if we have to consider in the legal department, that means an individual law firm or a person who is a law officer without having coordination with all other functionaries in the financial institution, whether it is basically whatever I have understood, any for the financial